我觉得大商场的东西不比小商店的东西便宜。And I made it, and I recently got an email this morning from the Anchor editorial team basically saying, it's very annoying with these Snapchats, I just have to do it at 10-second bursts. Basically saying that they would like to feature my channel. There are a couple little changes that they've asked me to make, but they said that they're considering my channel to be featured, which is yeah, pretty exciting. I mean, obviously it's not a guaranteed thing that's gonna happen, but we'll cross my fingers and hopefully it does. I mean, that'd be super, super, super cool if it does. Yeah! There we go.
Je suis allée à l'école. J'ai un rendez-vous avec mon professeur.
Ah oui?
Oui.
Pourquoi?
Et après, je suis rentrée, j'ai cuisiné et j'ai regardé quelques vidéos sur YouTube. Quand il fait un tour, vous pouvez sortir 2 hommes, tout s'évader.
S'évader, oui, c'est ça, exactement. That was a super fun lesson with my student. I've had her as a student for quite some time now, probably roughly, if I had to estimate it, roughly 6-ish months, something like that, 5-6 months I think, maybe 4 months, somewhere in that range. And yeah, it was a lot of fun because one thing I'll often do when I have a student for an extended period of time is I will record portions of a couple of different lessons. Like, so with Elizabeth, we had almost our first lesson recorded. I think it was our 3rd lesson recorded, and I've recorded lessons in between as well, but it was really interesting for us because we got to essentially listen to her first lesson, and then I also recorded a portion of this lesson. It was super cool to hear the difference because she's progressed a ton. So I really enjoyed that. I think she really enjoyed it as well. And it's something I think I need to start doing more. I need to start recording people's lessons more often because I've been forgetting lately. What is up, my fellow Anchor-ites? That is what I decided to call all of you. Welcome to my 2nd official Anchor episode, my Anchor podcast. And just like in yesterday's episode, essentially what we're going to do is I'm going to not read the article, but talk about a couple of the things that he said in the article and share my opinion on what Mark has said. And as per yesterday's episode, there's a lot of things he says that I agree with, and there's a lot of things that he says that I don't necessarily agree with. Now, the very first point on his website here says that conversation. I agree with this general premise. I agree that having conversations and doing conversation practice and speaking with people better than you, I agree that it is incredibly important. No doubt about that. With the 5 languages that I speak, I've definitely noticed that. The more conversation I've done, the better I've gotten. However, the one thing I'm not sure if I 100% agree with is this. He says that an hour of conversation is as good as 5 hours in a classroom and 10 hours with a language course by yourself. I don't know if that is true. Because in my experience, when I've studied different languages, I have found that conversation tends to be really good for practice. Tends to be really good with speaking with someone and practicing and really fully putting into practice a lot of things that you've already learned. And yes, no question about it, when you're having conversation, you're learning lots of different words and terms and grammar points, etc. But in conversations, because they're relatively spontaneous, what will often happen is that the vocabulary and everything that you're coming across and everything that you're learning, it tends to come from a variety of different categories. You might learn, 1 word related to politics and 2 random food terms, and then you might learn like 1 thing that you find in a house, and then you might learn, etc. They're coming from so many different categories, which in my experience, and maybe not for everyone, but in my experience, sometimes that makes it hard to remember. Remember all the words that I learned. Versus if I take as Mark puts it, 5 hours in a classroom, that 5 hours, typically speaking in classroom study, you are very focused upon a single unit of study. AKA, you're learning about, vocabulary related to your family. And then you get lots of practice exercises with that vocabulary, practice exercises with that grammar. And all of a sudden, it really ingrains it, in my experience, it ingrains it a little bit more into your brain. And for me, the conversation piece tends to be a way for me to practice things I've already learned. So, do I agree that conversation is extremely important? Absolutely. Do I think it is better than classroom study? I think in many cases, yes, 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 yes. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to spend all your time in the classroom. However, I don't know if that is always, always, always the case or not. I thought you were eating a snack for some reason yesterday. I wasn't sure. How's life in your world? What's new? Excited for your, you fly out tomorrow, right? Nice. What time's your flight? AM or PM? 7 AM? That's not so bad then. So let's start with your devoir, your homework. Just finished a meeting that was very interesting to me. It was a meeting about translating a game that teaches you how to code from English into French. And there's a couple things that are interesting about this whole meeting. Number one is how the meeting actually landed in my lap. As you guys know, I'm super out there with my languages, whether it be online, like on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, Snapchat, Anchor now, all that stuff. And also in my own city. So in my city, I do language learning related events, French learning events, Spanish learning events. I even teach from a library on purpose because a lot of the people in libraries are parents and children who often want to learn another language. And when they walk by your table and they hear you teaching French, you might get potential students or things like that. There's lots of different things like that I do. And probably roughly a month ago, I started seeing this one lady at the library where I teach from who also taught French, and we started to talk a little bit. And a couple of weeks ago, she approached me with this game to be translated. She's like, hey, I know a guy who wants this game translated. Do you want to help me out with it? And it was just interesting for me to be like, wow, it's interesting how when you're super out there with your passions, with your business, with all that stuff, it's funny how things often will come to you. It was just an interesting thing for me to notice. So this translation thing, I mean, it's not set in stone per se. It's not like, yeah, this is happening for sure. But so far it looks promising, and it's an interesting development in my life, and I'm excited about it. Yeah, it's good. It's been an interesting day. I had right now I'm in intensive Chinese lessons. So basically this week, next week, and the week after that, I have essentially, call it on average between 3 to 6 hours of Chinese lessons every day. So yeah, it's a lot. So today was lighter. I only had 2 hours. And so I had 2 hours of that. Then I taught some French in the morning, and then I'm going to be doing some translation. Well, potentially going to be doing some translation work for a game company. So I had a meeting about that, and then teaching some more in a little bit here. So your mom was saying that you're not getting as much Spanish practice as you'd like, and you're looking for a tutor so you can actually keep learning. Yeah, and I think one of the things about one-on-one is that when you're one-on-one, it's you and one teacher versus a teacher and 25 kids. So meaning if something doesn't make sense, you can just quickly ask me and we can work on your individual problems, versus in a class of 25, you're managing 25 other people's needs as well. So some students we'll sit down and we'll literally just talk for an hour. We'll have conversations about what's going on in your world, what you're doing that day, what your plans are for the weekend, things like that. And through our conversation, we'll actually bump into a lot of things that you don't know in Spanish. So for example, maybe we're talking about, I'll be like, hey, what'd you do today? And you're like, oh, I don't know how to talk about what I did today. Which then gets you into past tense. You go, oh, well, how does that work? And then we start to talk about past tense. And then we reverse back into, okay, well, now that you know how past tense works, let's talk about your day. And then maybe another day I'd ask you, hey, what'd you do over the weekend? And it's the same thing. It's like, oh, I actually don't know how to talk about what I'm doing this weekend. Oh, how do I talk about that? Oh, cool. So you haven't studied future? Maybe. And then you could go into and we can start to talk about it. And then what happens is that in all the lessons, because we're talking a lot, you have to use a lot of the tenses, the grammar, the vocab, all the things that we're learning. And usually I find that helps you remember. That's definitely one way to do it. The other option to do it as well is more of a quote-unquote more standard classroom approach. What I mean by that is we can go, okay, today we're doing present tense. Here's how it works. Here's the rules. Let's do some practice exercises with it. And we can do it more that style. Ça va?
Ça va bien, et toi?
Oui, ça va, ça va, ça va, ça va. So hiver, like this. Hiver. Hiver is winter. Ivre is something very different. Ivre is drunk.
Okay. It might work for this.
Oh, well. Hola, hola.
Hola.
¿Cómo estás? Bien, ¿y tú?
Bien.
See? Cuídate means something, but it's not, I looked after and... See, cuídate is like, take care of yourself. Cuídate.
Oh.
Take care of yourself.
I've heard it somewhere, but...
See, cuídate.
A greeting?
¿Qué? Greeting?
Like, take care.
No, not a greeting, more of a... what's the word? A goodbye? What's the word? What's the opposite of a greeting? A salutation?
I guess so.
I guess so. A way to say goodbye. Like, for example, we always say it at the end of our Skypes. Always say, okay, que tengas, well, you know, always be like, I don't know, que tengas un buen día, or I guess buena noche in our cases. Or like, cuídate, chao, or chao, cuídate. Okay, luz de mar, ¿entiendes?
Luz of the sea?
Perfecto, sí, perfecto. Continues. So, dulce sal, agua de miel, labios tristes de esperar, tantas huellas, tanto mar y tanto blues.
Sweet salt?
Ajá, agua de miel.
Water of honey?
Sí.
Sad lips of waiting?
Or hoping.
Hoping.
Depending on how you want to interpret it. Tantas huellas, tanto mar. So many.
Can't remember.
Footprints.
Oh, right.
Sí.
So many footprints. So much sea.
There we go.
And so much blues.
And so much blues.